It's the Devy Digest powered by League Winners. I'm Andy, and we're talking NFL assets we're fearful will lose value due to the NFL draft coming up. I have a guess. We cover all this and more after the intro. What is going on? We're talking some NFL today. We're talking NFL players that we're fearful are going to lose their values today or when the NFL draft comes up. So you should be trying to trade them today. My guest today, I had to bring him back on, Michael Anthony. Michael, how are you doing today, man?
Doing good. Thank you again for having me on. This is it's always fun to talk to you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming aboard. So what have you been up to since the last time you were on?
So there's been some changes to the Dynasty Dogs. We are starting a new series of Rich and myself are going to start opening packs of cards, like football cards, obviously, and picking a card from a pack each. And we're going to be building a Dynasty roster off of those cards throughout the next 14 weeks because we're doing 7 starters, 7 backups. And we're going to be going head to head during the NFL season against each other. So it's going to be fun to kind of build it that way. It's going to be an interesting way to do it because we're only also allowing ourselves one change. So say for instance, I have Kirk Cousins as my quarterback for whatever reason I chose him. And then I pull a Patrick Mahomes. Well, that's going to be my change, but I can't change it again. I can't change any of my roster spots again after that. So it's going to be interesting. And then we're going to try to figure out a way to give away some of the cards to listeners and stuff like that. So when we're done doing that portion of everything, we're going to try to give those cards away. So that'll be interesting. And right now we're also doing breakdowns on some of the rookies that are coming out in the podcast. Last night we did Marshawn Lloyd, Audric Estime, and Ray Davis. So that'll be out hopefully today. Got some software issues, but hopefully that'll be out later on tonight.
Very nice. Looking forward to listening to that. Now, are you ready to talk about some NFL guys who might lose some value coming up?
Yeah, so some of these are going to hurt me a little bit. It's going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and say it out loud. But
All right. Who's your first guy that you want to talk about?
so let's talk about ripping that damn Band-Aid off, right? So my first guy is going to be Tajay Spears, running back from Tennessee Titans. This is going to be probably a hot take to a lot of people, especially in the dynasty community, because he is a hot commodity right now. I mean, even at the end of the season when Derrick Henry was doing that farewell speech, I believe I even tweeted something out about how it was probably time to go out and buy Tajay Spears. But let's be honest, Tajay Spears is not going to be a guy who's going to get, a bulk of the carries or, those goal line carries or short yardage situations. He's going to be your slasher. He's going to be your PPR option. He's going to be the guy who's going to make people miss stuff like that. The problem is, I think they're going to bring in somebody who's going to have like a 60-40 split with Spears, which I believe lowers his value because right now I see a lot of people saying like mid to late first is his value. And if I'm a Spears owner and somebody wants to offer me that, to be honest, I would take it. Now, if somebody offers me a second, I'm absolutely not taking it because I think Tajay's better than a lot of running backs that are coming out of this class. But to me, like I said, we talked about it on last night's episode. I could see them bringing in like a guy like Audric Estime or Ray Davis to get those, short yardage goal line situations and that hurts Tajay's value just a bit because once those touchdowns are gone, man, that's going to suck, you know?
Yeah, I definitely do see that. And, with Derrick Henry leaving and that there's roughly around 300 vacated carries, there's a good possibility that the Titans will pick up a free agent running back, maybe like a Josh Jacobs, or someone to absorb some of those carries. So it is very likely that Tajay Spears will always be in that 1 to 1A kind of committee. And so if he is being valued that high, I can see that being a good target to try to sell now. And then you never know, maybe through the draft they go for someone like you had mentioned. The first guy that I want to talk about is Rashad White. He's probably a sell for me. I go back and forth with him. He had a very good season. I believe he was RB3 this past season. A lot of it was due to his catches that he got out of the backfield with Baker Mayfield. Now he's been inefficient as a runner, under 4 yards a carry, and he's someone that the Buccaneers might get someone through the draft, another young guy, just because they do have some expenses with the cap, so they have to go young, and they might go with someone young in the draft, and that could eat away at some of his carries. So his peak is at right now. So if I could try to trade him, I probably would.
Yeah, I could agree with that. The only thing that I think that gives White value is if Baker Mayfield is the quarterback again next year for the Tampa Bay Bucks, because Baker Mayfield throughout his at least the past few seasons has targeted the running back at an extremely high rate. But I do agree. I do think they probably plan on bringing somebody else in. I mean, there were rufflings about Sean Tucker being that guy, and it doesn't seem to be the case. So they might just kind of go back to the well. And you mentioned um, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley earlier. I don't think that's like a possibility for them, but they were a playoff team last year. If they can kind of bring that core back together, maybe they will make a run at one of those high end guys to try to put themselves over the hump. I mean, it's kind of a long shot, but who knows?
Yeah. Who's the next guy that you want to talk about?
So again, I guess I got to rip the band-aid off for this one as well. It's going to be Texans wide receiver Tank Dell. I have concerns about Dell. He was one of my favorite wide receivers coming into last year's class, to be completely honest with you. Extremely savvy route runner. I thought he had very solid hands. Obviously, the size was a major concern, and that kind of reared its ugly head toward the end of the season there. He only played 11 games. I think, what was his injury? I forgot to pull that up. Was that like a femur
Oh
or something?
yeah, yeah.
Something crazy, like one of the hardest bones in your body to break. And that dude, and first of all, I'm going off topic here for a second. Why was he in to kind of like do a push on the goal line? That's where he ended up getting injured, was a goal line play where he was like kind of in the scrum of everything. That's not necessarily the guy I want out there for that, but he had some good stats last year: 47 receptions, 709 yards, 7 TDs. An efficient receiver, a good option for CJ Stroud. But my issue with him right now is his value. I know keep trade cut is kind of like a dirty word in the dynasty spaces and stuff like that, but so many people use it. It is a kind of a good way to look at values for different players. And to see him as a similar value as a Devontae Smith, a Drake London, to be completely honest, I would take both of those guys in a heartbeat over Tank Dell. They have higher, capital on better. Well, I wouldn't say better offenses. We have to see what Atlanta is. I think the Eagles have a better offense once they kind of get their situation figured out. And I love Kellen Moore as the OC for the Eagles. I think that Devontae could be in that Keenan Allen role, but I do have some concerns about Tank Dell's durability. I have a problem with his, increased value right now, and I would be looking to sell. I would try to get like I don't know, who would you rather have? Let's just say you get the 110 in a super flex. I mean, that kind of right now that puts you at like the Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas area. Like, who would you rather have out of those three or those two, between Dell and one of those two?
I'll probably take the pick. Probably
Yeah.
take the pick and Probably take a pick and see if I could get also like another late pick swap, maybe like my fourth for their third or something like that, just to try to get some enhanced value. I
Mhm.
would try to enhance it that way, but I do see your point with Tank Dell, and especially with Nico Collins being there. They have two receivers that will probably cannibalize each other, and it's not without the realm of possibility that they bring in a veteran to
That was
kind of
yeah.
spearhead that team. And with CJ Stroud being coming into his second year, they have a lot of young pieces there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some veteran leadership to the wide receiver position. And you never know what they might do through the draft as well. So I do kind of like that.
So yeah, I actually that was actually something I forgot to mention is I really do think the Texans bring in another wide receiver. I think they need a third option. Obviously, like that's kind of the way the NFL is going. Two main guys and a third, but it kind of always seems to eat up on somebody. And I think Tank Dell could be the one that ends up losing some value because of that. I really thought T. Higgins would have been an option, but as we know from last night, T. Higgins got franchise tagged, so it doesn't look like he's going anywhere as of right now. But they could definitely um, add somebody through the draft. I think that's possible, especially with the young core, like you mentioned, that they have.
Yeah, and then the next guy that I want to bring up is Javante Williams. He is in his final year of his rookie contract, and with the Denver Broncos, they might try to go elsewhere, and they might go through the draft, get one of these rookies with one maybe like a day two or day three pick. So he's someone that could lose a little bit of value. I know last year there was a time where he gained some steam when he came back from his injury. It looked like he was playing well, and then they had Jaleel McLaughlin come in. He was a thing, and so with Javante being in the last year of his rookie deal, and the possibilities of the Broncos maybe drafting a rookie running back, I think right now you should probably try to get out from under him while you can.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying because I think they had bigger plans for Javante. It just hasn't really worked out these past 2 years. But let's be honest, usually when a running back tears his ACL, it usually takes about 2 years and then they kind of start to bounce back. So we're going into year two now for Javante. So I guess he's kind of a wait and see for me. I would like to see how he looks at the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, then it might be too late to kind of capitalize on the value that I think he has gained a little bit because, like you mentioned, he did start to show some flashes towards like the middle end of the season. So he's a tough one for me right now. I've done two startups and I've taken a flyer on him in the later rounds because he is a really good PPR back. He had I forget how many it was. He had I think like almost 50 receptions 2 years ago before the ACL injury. And those are valuable points. But like you mentioned, it is a contract year for him. They probably are going to bring somebody else in to kind of, you know, they're fading the running back position out as it is. So it's definitely possible that Javante's a good sell for right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility. Who's the next guy that you want to talk about?
So this one I think is just like kind of obvious at this point. Christian Watson, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Green Bay Packers, I think you and I can both agree are an ascending offense. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So I think if I'm going to not want anybody on that offense, it's going to be Christian Watson. Um, I think that they are going to go back to the well of drafting a wide receiver in the second round for the third year in a row. They did it the year Christian Watson came out. They drafted him in the second. Last year, they drafted Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave in the second round. So I think they're going to keep trying to add um, decent pieces to this offense to continue to grow it because it is the youngest wide receiver core, I believe, in the NFL. And the rate that Christian Watts is going with these injuries, he's going to find himself out of the league soon. It's frustrating because he shows these really nice flashes of, weeks where he'll have 2 touchdowns and 140 yards. And then he'll pop up on the injury report for the same hamstring injury that's been, laboring for 2 years. And then all of a sudden it'll be, the song head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Like it'll be the hamstring and then it's his head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees, and toes. Like it's frustrating because I was really high on Watson coming out, but I think if somebody's going to be kind of replaced in that Green Bay Packers wide receiver room, it's probably going to be Watson because Jaden Reed is kind of your do-it-all kind of wide receiver, eats up the middle of the field, can get to the outside. Romeo Dobbs, again, another vertical receiver, but actually was a really nice red zone threat for them as well. But Christian Watson, I think, is kind of looking at the end of the tunnel here because I think they're going to probably replace him.
Yeah, I think this coming season is a big season for him. He does need to take that next step. The next guy that I would consider selling now, I would say that is Brian Robinson for the Commanders. With Antonio Gibson likely being gone, it is quite possible that the Commanders might try to get a running back in the draft. I believe they have 5 picks in the first 100, and they might use one of those if they don't trade them away to possibly get a running back. And right now with Brian Robinson, he had a good season. You could probably try to capitalize on that before the NFL draft.
Yeah, I could agree with that. And that was another team that did go back to the running back well as well. I just said well, but it's crazy to me that Washington went and drafted Chris Rodriguez last year, which him and Brian Robinson are pretty much like the exact same. So I think who it's Antonio Gibson's on the last year of his deal as well. He's a free agent, I believe. So it wouldn't shock me if they go out and add a PPR type back or a reception back. And I think, like you meant, I think Brian Robinson's a really good sell right now because I still think you could get some value from him because he does
Yeah.
get those dirty yards.
Yeah, someone like a Jalen Wright, someone that's kind of that spark plug, someone that I could possibly see going there. Who's the next guy that you want to talk about?
So you want to talk about spark plugs? DeAndre Swift is my next guy. This one kind of hurts as well. He's a Philadelphia Eagle, but I do think he's not going to be with the Eagles next year. Um, he is probably going to find himself on another team, which would suck because of the fact that he has been in two really good situations in Detroit and Detroit, the year before he left, but he's been in two good situations and hasn't really done much of anything. And it seems like they kind of go away from him towards the end of the season. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're overthinking things, but he doesn't seem to be part of a team's plan when the end of the season starts to come around. I don't know what it is, and it's extremely frustrating to see because he'll get you 30 some odd points in fantasy, and then the end of the season he'll get 10, 12, 14. I don't know what happened. I could see him on another team next year. I could see the Eagles for sure drafting a running back because we just talked about Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez being very similar. Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift are very similar. Both smaller backs. Both obviously DeAndre is a much better in between the tackles runner than Kenny Gainwell is, but they're both smaller in stature, both better at catching the football than anything else. So I could see the Eagles bringing in a power back, and that would obviously hurt DeAndre Swift's value if he's still there, or if he goes to another team, he could just be another guy.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, so if you could definitely get rid of him before the NFL draft, definitely do that. My final guy that I want to talk about is Terry McLaurin. I'm going to stay with the Commanders. And my thing
You're
with
just
him
really
is
ripping them today, aren't you?
and my thing with him is he's 28. He's likely going to get a rookie quarterback, probably Drake May or Jaden Daniels, one of the two, if they don't trade up to get Caleb Williams. And rookie quarterbacks typically, for the most part, can't support a fantasy relevant wide receiver. Now, there are outliers to every situation, but the likelihood of him getting a rookie quarterback with him being 28 years old, there's still at least one or two managers in every league that really believe in Terry McLaurin. If you have him, I would suggest selling him now.
Yeah, it always surprises me every time I see Terry McLaurin's age because I feel like he's been in the league for like 2 years. And how old did you say he was? 27, 28,
28.
right? 28. So that's insane, to be honest with you. Um, he's been a productive wide receiver, but I agree with you. I think that things in Washington are going to be changing, and I think it's time to get out from him while you can. Because what do you think you can get for him in a dynasty or a Devy league? What do you think his value is right now?
I would probably try to target a team that is contending and try to get a late first if I'm in a
Mhm.
dynasty because if I'm trying to get the team that either lost in the championship or won in the championship, they probably don't value that late first, and they'll probably see Terry McLaurin, and they'll probably see that he'll be kind of a target monster, even if they do bring in a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels. And you could probably pull that off, but I would definitely aim for a team that is a contender to try to get that late first. Otherwise, you could probably try to get a younger type of a receiver that's in the same situation, kind of like a DK Metcalf. He'll be 2 years younger. He's in that same kind of area where the quarterback situation is kind of in flux. You don't know how long Gino's going to be there, and then at this time of the recording, Tyler Lockett's still on the team, and they have JSN who's on the up. So something like that, where you get a late first, or possibly swap out one headache for another with a DK Metcalf. Now, Mike, who's the final guy that you want to talk about?
So we did. I got Christian Watson, Tajay Tankdell, DeAndre Swift. I I guess my last guy, to be honest, would be I'd go back to that Houston Texans well, and it'd be Nico Collins. We talked about how they probably could bring in another wide receiver, and that's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. You know, Dalton Schultz, um, Nico Tankdell, a third wide receiver. I think that wide receiver room in Houston is a huge question mark, at least for this offseason, because they're so young that they could keep adding pieces and add in veteran pieces to help them get over that playoff hump. Because they were a surprise playoff team to me. I don't know about you, but I definitely didn't think they were a playoff team. So I definitely think it's possible that they start uh, not just going young, but even or going young or getting a vet to bring in because they do need a veteran presence.
Yeah, the Houston offense is a hot offense for people to target. So if you do have any of those pieces, it might be worth trying to sell. Now, those were our players that we are trying to sell before the NFL draft. And if you have any of those players, those should be some of the players that you should be considering before the draft takes place. Now, here at the Devy Digest, what we do is each episode we will do a 2024 Devy profile to get you ready for your rookie drafts. We'll also do a CFF player profile to get you ready for those sub drafts that take place in the summer and to give you an under the radar freshman player profile. Now, the first guy today that we are bringing up is the Devy Digest player profile of the day. That is Michigan wide receiver Roman Wilson. He is 5'10, 186 pounds. He is 22 years old. He does have a verified 4.37 in the 40. He is a quick, twitchy athlete, very good footwork. He showed out at the Senior Bowl, and he should get day two draft capital. He is someone that does project to be in the slot at the next level, and with day two draft capital, he is someone that should be on your radars in your rookie drafts. The CFF player profile of the day is South Alabama quarterback Gio Lopez. He is 6'1, 223 pounds. Last year, he was a true freshman. He played very well in the bowl game. Now, he does become the starter this year. And Major Applewhite, who was the offensive coordinator, is now the head coach. He is a dual threat quarterback, and now he does have a full offseason to have full command of that offense. He could very well be the next CFF sensation, and he should be available in your CFF and C2C leagues to be taken this summer in your sub drafts. The under the radar freshman player profile of the day is Texas Tech running back Jacoby Williams. He is 5'9, 175 pounds. He's a 3-star in the composites, as high as running back 27, as low as running back 49. He averages out to be running back 36, and he's my running back 33 for the 2024 freshman class. Now, what he does well is he has quick lateral movement. He fights through contact, even though being only 175 pounds. Now, he does have functional play strength for that weight as well. He is a capable receiver who also lined up out wide. He's a very good athlete, and when he runs the ball and has the ball in his hands, he does does have long galloping strides. Now, he does have a pathway of playing time. Due to being lined up out wide in high school and being used in multiple ways, he could be a third down back as a true freshman. Now, Taj Brooks is back and he should be the feature back for this program. But if Williams can work his way into the rotation and show some signs as a true freshman, he'll be able to add on some weight and be the guy next year as a sophomore. Now, those were our player profiles of the day. Now, Mike, where can people find you on X and what are you currently working on, man?
So you can find me at Dynasty Dog Mike on X. Obviously, we're working on the Dynasty Dogs podcast all the time. I mentioned the new Dynasty Dog Duel. I forgot that's what we're calling it, the card thing that we're doing on the podcast. You can find myself at Dynasty Dog Mike. You can find my co-host, because I got to give him a shout out because that's my guy, at Dynasty Dog Rich. You can find him on X as well. Actually, do you mind if I ask you a question about Roman Wilson, if you don't mind, real quick? Because
Yeah.
while you were talking about him, I was thinking I had a question for you. What is the perfect landing spot for him, do you think?
I don't think he's very team dependent just because of the player style that he is. So he's one of those
Mhm.
players that he could fit anywhere. And I view him as a slot. So any team that needs a slot, I think would work really well. Obviously, if he goes to a team that does pass the ball more, it will be a better situation. But I don't think he's very team dependent. You know, he's someone that showed at the Senior Bowl that he can get open on any play, and
Mhm.
he's done that throughout his entire career at Michigan. He's a very good athlete, so I think as long as he gets that day 2 draft capital, I wouldn't be afraid for any team that he goes on to. If people are afraid of Marvin Harrison going to the Patriots just because they don't have anyone there. With Roman Wilson, if he ends up being a Patriots, I wouldn't mind that. Him and Pop Douglas, they can both work, inside outside. So because of that, I don't have any reservations on his potential landing spot, negatively or positively.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to think in my head of a team that, because there's a lot of wide receiver needy teams in this league right now. So I was trying to think of some places that could use him. And I think that was a good one, like you mentioned, New England. I think a team like Arizona, who doesn't, who has, I mean, Rondell Moore hasn't really been healthy enough to be a continuous threat for them. So I think Roman Wilson would be a great addition to that offense, because I do think they're going to probably grab at least two wide receivers in this draft.
Yeah, I kind of see that. He's a player that, he's a very good player, and he showed his worth at the Senior Bowl and throughout his entire career at Michigan. He should test really well as well at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, it's next week.
hmm
Snuck up on us.
Yeah, so that should be pretty fun. Now, we've reached to the end of the show here, and if you've enjoyed the content, some of my other stuff, where you can find my audio and video shows every Sunday and Wednesday with a Devy Digest powered by League Winners. They air on Spotify and Apple every Monday and Thursday. On Mondays, myself, Nino, and SC, we do the Future Phenoms through League Winners. They air on Tuesday on Spotify and Apple. Every Tuesday, I do Welcome to the Big House through the CFB Nation, and they air on Spotify and Apple a couple of days later. For my written content, you can find them through the League Winners. Every Monday, we do a 2024 Devy Digest player profile to get you ready for your NFL drafts. Every Friday, we do the Devy Digest Freshman Friday player profile to get you ready for those C2C and Devy rookie drafts and sub drafts coming up. Every Wednesday and Saturday, we do content with Utah State, and BYU football to get you ready for spring camp and to bring you some exclusive behind the scenes content. Now, we'll be back next time, but before we go, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and you can follow me at Andy_fam1. And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, give us a rate and review, and we'll see you next time on the Devy Digest.